Today, we dive deep into the Leafs and Panthers series and discuss three themes hurting Toronto and how they can adjust to keep their season alive on Wednesday. Also, the draft lottery is in the books. We'll tell you who won the lottery and how it opened up old wounds, Dave. All that and more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the May 9th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. If you're an everydayer who listens to the podcast, you know this. But if you're new to the show or a first-time listener, Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. Also, you can catch us up on YouTube as well. Locked On Leafs. Hit subscribe. We got new content coming out each and every weekday morning, Monday through Friday. It's all Leafs all the time. You're going to want to be a part of the Locked On Leafs family. Dave, what's happening, brother? How you feeling? You've had about 24 hours now, I guess, to kind of digest that performance. How you feeling?
Oh, fantastic. No, not really. It's been, you know what, like the whole idea of having the two games off doesn't feel too great. You know, either I know there's like if you haven't been in the Discord lately, Discord has been it's been a tough place. It's been a tough place. Like, you know what? It's good therapy to get your feelings out. Don't hold your feelings in. None of that's happening in the Discord right now.
No.
Luckily, it's been, for the most part, it's been respectful. I will say, we keep it quite respectful. I will go in, kind of try to diffuse situations if possible. So, yeah, it's been. If you want to get a sense of what Leafs Nation is feeling right now, pop over into the Discord to see that.
Yeah, make sure that we post that link down in the comment section below and pin it as well so that people can go and join the Discord, the Locked On Leafs Discord. Yeah, man. I mean, look, the Leafs are down 0-3 in the series. Only 4 times in 201 attempts has a team come back from a 3-0 deficit. Most recently done in 2014 with the LA Kings. It was done in 2010 by the Flyers. And one time ago, it was done by the Toronto Maple Leafs. But you got to go all the way back to World War II in 1942 when that happened. So it's been a long time since a Maple Leaf squad has been able to climb out of that big of a hole. But this team, they're gonna try. It's not over yet. It feels like it, but they still have an opportunity to rewrite the narrative and really basically put us all in our place for doubting them, because that's where they're at right now. Huge doubts are being cast, upon this group of players, and I'll say that I believe it's warranted based on how they've played over the course of the last 3 games. But guess what? It's only 3 losses in this series, not 4. So there's still opportunity to go out there and change our minds. Dave, what we're going to do today is, since it's an off day and not much was really going on, there was no practice, we're going to kind of just take a peek and kind of reflect on what we've seen over the course of the first 3 games and the problems that have arose here for the Maple Leafs. 3 things that are hurting the Maple Leafs in this series. So we'll go through these 3, and then we'll kind of discuss how we think Toronto can combat some of these issues going forward into a must-win Game 4. We'll also go through, the Bedard sweepstakes. The draft lottery was done, tonight, I guess, as we're recording. Last night, by the time you're listening to this, and we know exactly where Bedard is going to go. So that kind of brought back some good memories from Austin Matthews being the number 1 pick for the Maple Leafs when they won the lottery, but also some kind of bad memories from the year prior. I'll explain what I mean by that in a little bit. But let's go through these 3 things that are hurting the Maple Leafs through this series, Dave, the number one thing that I think is really setting this team back right now, and the biggest reason why they're down 3-0 in this best of 7 to the Florida Panthers, is because they're getting zero production from their big boys. It's not that it's a lack of production, they're getting zero production from these guys. No goals from Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, or Riley this entire series. Those five, I believe, combined for what was it, like 42 points or something like that, 32 points, some through the first series, and here they are, and they're just laying complete goose eggs early on in this series. That to me has been the number one thing. Those guys just haven't been able to get going.
No, and you look back to even like back to the Tampa series, you see the moments where they can step up and have that impact. You think of John Tavares scoring that hat trick in the series, Austin Matthews scoring those two goals to give the Leafs the helps bring the Leafs come back from 4-1 down. You see Austin Matthews and John Tavares scoring in Game 6 to help the Leafs finally win that playoff round. That's
Marner had 11 points. It was quiet, but he had 11 points in that series.
yeah, like it wasn't like Mitch Marner didn't do anything in that series, and you go into the Florida series, and it's crickets. It is legitimately crickets from these guys. Like I understand that they've had chances on net, they've had scoring chances in the first two games. Third game, I mean, we're just nothing was going for them. Austin Matthews had a few looks, but that's not what they're being paid for. They're not being paid for looks. They're being paid for the points to show up on the score sheet. You're not winning many series when that's not happening. And we continuously hear Sheldon Keefe say he's baffled. He doesn't understand what's going on. I don't know if that's just him just in the moment, not really sure what to say, but I think it's becoming pretty clear what's the issue. And until that changes, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Those guys had to figure out a way to turn the process into results. Like we've talked a lot about, expected goals and whatnot, but when it comes down to it in the playoffs and when you're down 3 goals to nothing, the process kind of gets thrown out the window and it's results driven. Are you scoring? Are you producing? And the answer for these guys is no. Were they getting a bunch of chances in game 1 and 2? Absolutely. But then they all went away in game 3. So that's kind of the sour taste that's left in a lot of our mouths, I would say. The fact that, Mitch Marner on the ice for 18 scoring chances against just 4 generated while being on the ice offensively. He's been outscored 4-1 so far in this series at 5-on-5. You look at his shot share, just 42% of the expected goals. Like Mitch Marner has really, really struggled in this series, and I thought that he had his worst game in game 3. You look at William Nylander. He had one solid period in game number 2, came alive in the third, but really hasn't done a whole lot since. But, Austin Matthews rips one off of the crossbar in the opening shift of the game 3, and then went quiet and didn't get his first shot on net until the 14-minute mark of the third period. This top line needs to get going. Outside of a power play goal from Ryan O'Reilly, none of their big core players have hit the score sheet. And it really is not something that can continue if this team wants to make it a series and extend their season. They've gotten plenty of depth scoring, plenty of it. If you look at it, Dave, there is a difference of just 4 goals through 3 games. Just 4 goals through 3 games, 2 of which were 1-goal games, one of them going into overtime. You get 1 or 2 goals from your star players, from your big boys in those 3 games, all of a sudden, those are completely different. That's either a win for Toronto or, one of those games goes to overtime, and who knows what happens once you take it to OT, especially in game 2 where they were all over them toward the end of that game. So if they would have gotten a couple more goals from Toronto's big boys, I think this would be a completely different series. But 0 is the number, and that's the same number of wins that they have through 3 games so far. It's really unfortunate, but they got to get going. How do they start scoring? That is the $40 million question, I suppose, is how do they, come through in the playoffs? It's something they really haven't done outside of, I guess, the first round where they found a way to get it done. But for me, it's pretty much just work harder. I think that there's a lack of effort and urgency from this group, and they need to get a lot more second and third opportunities. I think there's been rebound chances. There's been a lot of blow-bys, and also they've been outworked for loose puck battles, and Florida's been able to get rid of the puck from danger areas. I think that if they're able to, bang at some of those pucks and rebounds that are sitting towards the side of the goal in front of Bobrovsky, it's probably a different story. But they haven't been able to get to those loose pucks, and they've been losing out on those, one-on-one battles in front of the net. And here we are, still searching for the first goal from the big boys. So that, to me, is the number one thing that is hurting this team.
And it's not even just they're not getting the second and third opportunities. They're not even getting to the prime scoring areas. Like you see, like where Austin Matthews is shooting from, it's kind of off to the side. Yeah, he's scored many goals from that spot, but we know he's at his most dangerous when he's getting those chances in front of the net. They're not winning the battles for space in the offensive zone. They're also not playing with a lot of pace. Like I know they're not the known as like burners with like on skates like Anthony Duclair, but they have not been playing with much pace. And if there is, it's usually one guy. It's like Michael Bunting skating into the zone, trying to go 1-on-4, and there's nobody else really for support. I think that's actually the biggest problem, a lack of support, because you kind of got a one and done because it's one guy trying to do everything and he doesn't have the support from the rest of his line mates. They gotta play as a more united group, because that's what makes it harder to defend against when the forecheck is there, when they're all, you know, feeding off of each other. But when it's just one guy you have to take care of, makes it a little easier to defend.
Yeah, the word I think you're searching for is one that gets talked about by a lot of these players. John Tavares uses it almost every day, and it's the term playing connected. They're not
Yeah.
really playing connected right now. They're looking a little discombobulated, and there's too many individual efforts, not enough team efforts. And look,
1,000%.
it's the ultimate team game, man. You got to rely on sharing the puck with your teammates. And look, at the end of the day, this team has zero chance to come back in the series if those guys do not get going. All right, we've got two more things that we believe are hurting the Maple Leafs. We'll tell you about them on the other side. But first, let me tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors. It's our good friends at Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with professional tools that find you matches and candidates. And with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. Offer good for a limited time only. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/locked-on. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. We just do want to show some appreciation to the everydayers who tune into this podcast. We appreciate all the love and support that we got for you guys. Our last episode went bonkers, over 10,000 hits on our last one. So thank you to all the everydayers, which means 10,000 hits. There's a lot of new people out there listening as well. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content and sub up. We got a lot of new subscriptions also from that video. So, the more subscribers, the happier Dave and I can be. Hopefully the Maple Leafs can do us a favor and go on a nice long run so we can continue to add to this Locked On Leafs family. But in order to do that, Dave, There's a couple more things that the Maple Leafs need to start cleaning up in this series if they want to make any attempt in climb back into this thing. No pun intended, taking on the Panthers. They gotta declaw the Panthers here by doing these things. I think when we look at what's gone on defensively, you look at the pairing of TJ Brody and Jake McCabe, supposed to be this team's shutdown pair. Well, they just have not been that. They haven't been anything close to being a shutdown pair. They haven't been shutting anything down. You look at Jake McCabe's numbers so far through this series. Do you remember the statistic that everybody was going crazy for about Justin Hall in the Tampa series?
The plus minus stat.
No,
stat?
yeah, like how many percentage he was on ice for 73% of the goals at the
Goals
time.
against. Yeah.
He was pulled, right, through the first 5 games. Jake McCabe has been on the ice for 80% of the goals against Toronto so far in this series. He's been on the ice for 8 of the 10 goals against so far and has yet to be on the ice for a goal for. Yes, he is -8 in goal differential in all situations. TJ Brody on the ice for 6 goals against himself, just 1 goal for. Those two are supposed to be the two that shut down an opposition's top players. They did a decent job of it, I would say, against the Tampa Bay Lightning. They only gave up 1 goal at 5-on-5 against that top unit of Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point. But that has not been the case here. They have not been shutting anyone down, and they got to be a hell of a lot better going forward if this team stands a chance to come back in this series.
And yeah, the real question is how do you change that, right? Like, are you gonna you
Well,
can't like do you split them up? Do you like you? The problem is they're on
what
the
do
road.
you do? What are you gonna do? Who are you gonna? If you split them up, what do you do?
Like, do you do Brody and Riley? Like, do you reunite that pairing? Because like I don't know which I mean probably McCabe has been probably the one that's been the most guilty of the two.
I don't know, man. I mean, they've both been pretty bad. Brody's work on that game winner in overtime the other night, that was some pitiful, pitiful defending
Yeah, that was
in
pretty.
the neutral zone and then again in behind the net. So he's just as bad as McCabe, if you ask me.
So like, and the problem is, does that leave you with a McCabe Shen pairing? Does that work? I don't. We saw it a little bit. We didn't really see a lot of it, but
Yeah.
that's where I'm saying where Sheldon Keefe has really struggled in those. Like that pairing has been a problem, and there's been nothing really to see if maybe let's split these guys up for a little bit just to see if we can you know shake the cobwebs a little bit here, and get something fresh out there. So, like, I don't think that's going to change. Sheldon Keefe isn't one to really drastically change his defensive pairings through these playoffs. Like, the biggest change was when Justin Hall came out of the lineup. Other than that, nothing has been changed from this blue line. And when you look at what the issue with the series has been, is that it's all been this Panthers have been relentless on the forecheck, and the D
Yep.
just cannot take. They can't break the puck out of their zone. When
Well,
they do have the puck, it's like they see a panther and they like turtle.
so I think it's twofold. I think one, yes, they're having a lot of problems breaking the puck out of the zone. That has been the case, and that's been a lot of the Panthers' forecheck, forcing turnovers and keeping possessions alive by doing that in the offensive zone. But I think when you think about it defensively, when they're actually on their heels playing defense, they got to figure out a way to shut down the cycle. They've been owned on the cycle, and they're wearing these guys down, and that's the problem here. Is they're getting worn down by trying to have to defend the cycle game, and they're skating around a lot, and they got to figure out a way to stop it, right? Get a stop, and then move the puck up the ice. They have not really found a way to do that. So if they can stop the cycle, I think that goes, a long way to not allowing, the Kachuk, Bennett line, also the Lundell and the Reinhart line, who has scored a bunch of goals from in behind the net, right? Like that's what happens there, right? You allow play to get in behind the net, they cycle, and then they go out front. That's the recipe that they have, and they've scored a couple of times with that line in particular. So if they could shut down the cycle, I think that's one. And then also defending the rush has been a bit of a problem as well. They've allowed too many guys getting in behind them for breakaways, or they've allowed some 2-on-1s here. So they got to do a better job staying on top of their man when they're defending the rush and don't get caught, um, making a bad read or get caught pinching or whatever and giving up an odd man rush or a breakaway. That's also been a big issue that I think, some guys on this group has done. So those are the two things that I think they need to do. Yes, of course, getting the puck out is important, but ultimately, I think their natural position of defense, they got to defend better, both on the rush and against the cycle. Both of those have been really poor throughout the series.
Yeah, and part of the reason why the Leafs have really struggled, especially in Game 3, the transition game for Florida, like they get the puck in their zone and it's stretch pass up the ice and it throws the Leafs into just a very like they don't know what to do when the Panthers, do those quick ups on the stretch passes, or whether it's, in their own zone, the Leafs get the puck and they don't know where they want to go with it. Like those two things, if you can slow them down in the neutral zone, if you can find a way to cleanly break it out of your zone, it's going to lead to chances going your way. But the problem is that the Panthers have been, as a unit, playing as a very connected unit, have found ways to pressure the Leafs, get on top of pucks, get to those open spaces just that much quicker. They just know exactly where the puck is going to be and where they need to be on the ice, and it's a little frustrating to see. It's been very frustrating to watch that, because you're just like, make a pass, get to that puck, let's go here.
Yeah. So lack of production from the big boys, big problem so far.
Mm-hmm.
Unable to, the shutdown pair of McCabe and Brody have been turnstiles and have been on the ice for a majority of the goals scored against this Toronto team. And the third thing that I think is really hurting this Maple Leafs team in this series is they're getting just downright worked in the neutral zone. Their neutral zone defense has been invisible. They've been allowing Florida to really work themselves into the offensive zone pretty handily and easily with speed, and they're creating off the rush. And on the other end, Toronto really have not been able to do that, right? They haven't been able to get through the neutral zone as easy as I thought that they would. There were some times where they were able to do so, but where I think that they are lacking is, off the counter attack. And this is what I mean by, losing the neutral zone battle. Something that Toronto excelled in all season long was neutral zone defense from the forwards. So guys like Matthews and Marner and Nylander, they retreat back and would be puck hounds. Like, how many times can you remember, Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner or Nylander, racing back and then just lifting the stick and stealing a puck and transitioning up the ice and creating an odd man rush that results in a goal, right? Creating those neutral zone turnovers and then turning up ice and attacking with a counterattack and scoring a goal off of it. They have not been able to do this. So they're not getting the zone easily, and they're not attacking off the rush, which is where Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews have really been their most impactful throughout the course of their careers, realistically, when they are together. So without doing that, they're not getting those opportunities. And that is really what has been their bread and butter a lot of, the season, this year and last. I mean, dude, Mitch Marner led the NHL this year, not forwards, the entire National Hockey League in takeaways. Where is that Mitch Marner? Can we go find him? This is some imposter who's afraid to play defense and playing extremely timid offensively as well. And I think this has to, a lot of this can be cleaned up, but where I think they can really try and get a little bit more offense and also limit the breakout of Florida is to be a little bit more stingy in the neutral zone and close on them quick, try and force those turnovers, and then turn back up ice. They haven't been doing any of that in this series.
And we talk a lot about how, Florida's been able to stay on top of the Leafs. It starts in the neutral zone. Any team that plays the Leafs know if you can slow them down in the neutral zone, that makes them that much easier to defend against, because the Leafs have really struggled with the dump and chase and retrieving loose pucks that way. And, you clog the neutral zone, then the Leafs just are kind of just at odds of what they want to do there. And the Leafs haven't really done that at all. Like I mentioned the stretch passes. That's how you kind of get teams to back up a little bit more.
It worked for 10 minutes, and then Paul Maurice adjusted, and they figured out a way to stop it. And then Toronto went, oh, well, now they're not letting us do this anymore. Well, what do we do, coach? And he sat there.
And the other problem is the Leafs are lacking foot speed, right? They don't have that guy that's just gonna skate through. Nylander's usually the one to do it. Kerfoot to some degree would do it. Haven't really seen as much of it.
You know who was great at that, Dave?
Oh no.
My guy, Pierre Engvall.
I knew you were gonna bring up
zone entry king. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I wonder how he's doing in the playoffs. Oh wait, he's not there anymore.
Scored a goal though, Dave. He scored a goal.
He did score a goal. Good for Pierre. Like I watch a lot of. I mean, through my work, I watch a lot of the other series. I look at every other team has found ways to just break through that neutral zone trap by just try to skate through it, right? Like just head down, try to get through it. Like Vegas. If you're watching the Golden Knights Oilers game, which was just the Golden Knights scrimmage match against the Oilers, and pretty much the amount of speed that and forcing the Oilers to back off on them, right? Because the Oilers were afraid of getting caught on those odd man rushes. The Leafs haven't done any of that. How many odd man rushes have you seen from the Leafs in this series? Especially in Game 3.
They had a couple from the fourth line, one in which actually both of the goals were off of odd man rushes, but they were both from the fourth line, and one of which was Gustafsson jumping up into the rush.
And that's the other problem. They don't have defensemen that are capable of engaging. Like, we don't want Justin Hall doing that.
Well, they do. I mean, the reason why he put Gustafsson in there is because he can do that. I think Morgan Rielly clearly is somebody who likes to jump into the rush and has been very successful doing that in the postseason. The one player who I think does it a little too much for my liking, and it's starting to become a bit of a problem, is Jake McCabe.
Yeah.
Like, I find that this guy thinks he's, some sort of second coming of Cale Makar or something, the way that he likes to bring the puck down low into the zone and, jump up into the rush. It's like, aren't you a defensive defenseman? What are you doing down here? What are you doing below the hash marks here, Jakey boy? Now, sometimes I do scratch my head at that.
Yeah, and like it's your offensive guys should be the ones in those situations. I don't consider Jake McCabe much of that offensive guy. That's why maybe you consider trading off the pairing a little bit there, and you get Morgan Rielly into more of those situations and getting him those minutes, especially at 5-on-5. Like Luke Shen should be strictly doing defensive work, right? Although I will say Luke Shen is doing one thing that I wish more defensemen should be doing on the Leafs, and that is throw the puck on net and get it through. Not just throwing it and hitting a body in front, but getting it through and letting that create a little bit of chaos because it's Bobrovsky maybe has a hard time tracking it. It led to that goal. If you look back on Game 2, the Kerfoot goal was because Luke Shen, instead of firing it around the boards, says, you know what, I'm going to throw this on net, see what happens.
Yep, exactly. And then, Kerfoot picks up a rebound and drags it across, puts it up. And, they were kind of, opened up the score in that way. So those are the three things that are hurting this Maple Leafs team in this series. And, if they don't, respond to these issues, and if they continue to play like that, they'll be golfing by the weekend, pal. But hopefully they can turn things around here and they can start getting some production from the big boys. Hopefully Brody and McCabe come back and have a great show out, and hopefully they can, stop the cycle, defend against the rush, not allow any amount of chances or goals against when they're out there. And hopefully they can also, start picking up some speed and cut through the neutral zone and get some good looks offensively and also defend the neutral zone a little bit better, get those neutral zone turnovers and try and create more up ice with a counterattack. That's kind of been the bread and butter, again, of Matthews and Marner for a while, and just haven't seen that nearly enough, really at all, in this series. So those are the three things that we have compiled that we believe are hurting the Maple Leafs in the series, and things better change come Wednesday or 4. And I'm not talking about how many games they'll be eliminated in.
as you said that, I have my golf clubs. Maybe I got to take my golf clubs out of my room here.
Yeah, it's a bad omen. You got John Tavares jersey there just staring at the golf clubs, waiting to hit the greens. That's what's happening.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to do that. I'm
You
not.
gotta get them out of your office, pal. Gotta get them out of your office. I noticed you took the Cujo jersey down.
Yeah, well, because I was doing a different recording today, and it didn't make sense to have a Cujo jersey up, so I did take it's right here. It's like it's on.
Hey, let's all. Hey,
It's in our
I'm
booth.
pretty sure the Leafs are 0-3 since the Cujo jersey made an appearance. So he could stay over there. He could stay over there, David.
Anything else you need me to change in this room, Mike, to kind of get rid of the bad juju?
I don't know. Maybe I'll send Julia over there and she can do one of her seance things, whatever the hell she did, burn some sage and get get the bad juju out of there.
I'll fire up the pizza. We can get some good pizza going, and then we can throw some. Oh, we'll make a party out of it.
Down for that. All right, buddy. Let's take a quick break because the draft lottery was tonight too, and that was a lot of fun. I think that one franchise is being transformed, and I'll tell you who that franchise is on the other side and why it brought back some good memories and also brought back a pretty tough memory. I'll tell you all about that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti, the host of this show. Maple Leafs with Game 4, do or die, must win tomorrow evening in Sunrise, Florida. They got to come out with a much better effort, Dave. A much better effort, or there could be a lot of changes, and they could find themselves in the draft lottery in the next couple of years. But before we get way ahead of ourselves on them getting into the draft lottery, let's break down this year's draft lottery, which is probably the most highly anticipated one since Connor McDavid. Connor Bedard, the clear star in waiting here, who is the projected consensus #1 overall draft pick. You saw him light up the World Juniors. You saw him light up, the Western Hockey League for the Regina Pats, and you just know that he's going to be a true superstar in this league, in the ilk of the Connor McDavids and Sidney Crosbys. This is the star status that this kid is coming into the NHL being built with. And after the draft lottery was completed, we now know where Bedard is off to, and it's the Chicago Blackhawks, moving up from the 3rd overall slot up to the 1st slot, with the Anaheim Ducks picking 2nd, and then the Columbus Blue Jackets moving from 2 down to 3. I think this is good for the league. I mean, I think a lot of Leaf fans were just praying that Bedard didn't end up in Montreal. So check, that happened.
Or anywhere in the Atlantic, to be honest there.
Yeah, like Detroit was another one where no one really wanted to see him going. I think that was it for the Atlantic teams, though.
Yeah,
I don't know if
no one else could have moved up high enough.
Yeah, right. So it was either going to be Detroit or Montreal. But no, it's going to Bedard's going to Chicago. I think it's actually really good for the league. Like, I think that going to an original 6 franchise, a team like that, I think is best for the league. Like, I'm thinking straight up hockey-related revenue reasons. Like, that's what I'm going through. And why does that matter? Why does HRR matter? Because when HRR is high and they bring in a lot of money, that means the salary cap goes up, and the Maple Leafs benefit from a much higher salary cap because they're willing to spend up to the cap. And that's how they can keep all their star players and sign star players. So it actually is a really good thing that he ended up here and not in Anaheim or San Jose or Columbus, some of these other places where people looked at the rosters and said, oh, he looked good with that guy. He'd look good with McTavish. He'd look good with, Goudreau, or he'd look great alongside Zegras. Yeah, but is that best for the league? Are they going to make the most money by having him out west or having him in California, not the greatest hockey markets? I don't think so. You put him in Chicago, a team that's in transition with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, quite literally perfect timing, leaving the organization. It's time to usher in this new crop of young talent in Chicago, and it could be centered around the next big thing, Connor Bedard. I actually think this was a win for the NHL.
So I'm gonna make two statements about that. One, it was reported that the Blackhawks had already sold $2.5 million worth of season tickets for next season within 1.5 hours of winning the number one pick.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
I rest my case. That probably would have sold out Arizona's Mullet Arena in 2 seconds. Realistically.
Just it was about, they said, including more than 500 new full season plans. So 500 brand new season ticket holders in 1.5 hours. I will say, just for the sake of that, we have this out there. I understand the whole issues with the Blackhawks the last few years and everything that they did, and
Yeah, that's fair. I did see a lot of
I totally
vitriol about how that organization does not deserve Connor Bedard because of that, and there's some merit to it. I'll say that there's definitely some merit to that.
Yeah, like what they did the last few years was despicable. What they did to Kyle Beach was despicable. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. At the same time, the NHL closed the book on that by fining them. The people involved are no longer working for that organization. So it's not like nothing happened with the NHL, the Blackhawks. And I totally get it. If you're upset about it, I have no issues if you're upset about it. But yeah, like there is a positive thing. Now the Blackhawks can try to find a way to now move forward, bring in a new era. That's, I think, what they've been trying to do ever since this whole situation went down. So Bedard can be the face of that. If there's a silver line to it, hopefully, the Blackhawks have learned from what they did in the past, and now they can try to do right going forward. So yeah, I figured that should be something we mention here. But yeah, I still think, even now, if you're an Anaheim Ducks fan and you're upset about losing the number one pick, Adam Fantilli is a pretty good consolation prize.
Yep.
Ask the Vegas Golden Knights what it means to have the number 2 guy in the draft. If you look at how Jack Eichel's been performing in these playoffs, I think Adam Fantilli is going to be a really, really good player for Anaheim, and they found ways to load up with how much of that new talent they brought into the Ducks there.
Well, Dave, I don't want to throw some cold water on your statement there, because I also believe that Adam Fantilli is one hell of a consolation prize for them. He's going to be a great centerman. He's a local kid from Nobleton, Ontario, 6'4", over 200 pounds. He had 65 points in 36 games as a freshman at the University of Michigan, a 30-goal scorer this year at a ripe young age of 18 years old. He's going to play at the World Hockey Championships to play with men next week. Like, he's going to be a special talent himself as well. It's a really, really talented 1-2 duo that is at the top of the board this year. So yes, I think Anaheim's getting a great consolation prize in the way that Buffalo did years ago when Jack Eichel was the number 2 behind Connor McDavid. But they're still going to be a little upset. They're still going to be a little upset, and you completely understand, because Connor Bedard is just a completely different animal when it comes to the hype and when it comes to the talent. So we'll see what happens there. I was teasing that there was, some bad memories that were brought up for me. Obviously, the good memories of the Maple Leafs winning the draft lottery and being able to select Austin Matthews. That was a terrific day for Leafs Nation. And up until about a week ago, the only thing that Leafs Nation had really had to celebrate, and quickly did that, kind of really go down the toilet, obviously, where we're sitting right now. But, that was really one of the only bright spots in the last decade for Leafs Nation to celebrate, was winning the draft lottery. I bring that up because the year prior, I don't know if you remember this, but they were so there's the way that the draft lottery process works is they bring out 4 balls, and every team has numbers that are associated with the balls. So after the 3rd ball was taken out, Toronto had the strongest odds to get Connor McDavid. because they had 4 balls left and no other team did. So there was a couple teams that had 3, Edmonton had 2, along with a couple other teams. But Toronto had the strongest odds after the 3 first balls were taken that he was going to end up being a Maple Leaf. Obviously, we know what happened. The ping pong ball goes Edmonton's way, and he's out there looking like a rock star. A very similar situation happened tonight at the draft lottery, Dave. I don't know if you saw this, but Connor Bedard was 1 ball away, 1 number away from being a Vancouver Canuck. The Canucks, who had the worst odds at winning the entire lottery, was so close. They had to get 3 balls. Hold on, let me see exactly what the
It was 1 number they were off by.
They were off by legitimately like 1 number.
I think the ball ended up being 12 and they had 13.
I have the tweet. So so the winning draft combo was 4, 5, 9, 13. And the Canucks had 4, 5, 9, 12.
That's what.
So after the 3 first numbers, there is a really strong possibility that he was going to end up in Vancouver. And then they were 1 number shy. It was ball 13 instead of ball 12 that showed up. And all of a sudden, the Canucks go from picking number 1 overall with the hometown North Van generational superstar coming back home in Connor Bedard. But 1 number stood between that and them now having to pick 11th overall in the draft. Ain't that a B word, brother?
I remember, I think it was Chris Johnson at the time when the McDavid draft lottery was happening, and he tweeted out that the Leafs had the best odds because certain reporters are allowed to be in the room when it's happening. I remember CJ was in there. I'm pretty sure he's the one that tweeted out the Leafs.
Yeah, he was.
Odds. It ruined the rest of my night. I remember that. And now for those who are saying the NHL is rigged with the draft lottery, they actually have a video out right now that you can watch as the draft lottery is unfolding with Gary Bettman and how it all works. So, conspiracy theorists, that's been debunked.
Well, I will say they did not help when they announced the 3rd overall pick.
Columbus fans, my heart goes out to you, man. That's just brutal how that happened.
Yeah, so that's not live. Those voiceovers, I think, are canned. And whoever was in the truck, I think, were doing the 1s and 2s on the switcher. They played the wrong clip. They fired the wrong audio clip. And, the one they fired wasn't whoever ended up with the 4th pick. It was, and Columbus now has moved down, which means one of Anaheim or Chicago. And then they went to break, and it was like, wait, they didn't reveal the 3rd pick yet. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And for a second, I'm like, did they just?
Because they usually reveal 3 first. They usually do 3 first, then they reveal number 1.
Yeah.
Because it's the top 3 that they always really wanted to give the bit like that last spot to.
But they go to break and then reveal 3, then 1. But they told us what 3 was before they went to break and revealed it. It was like, I was like, did I hear that correctly? Did Columbus fall to 3? What? Is that what they just said? And Chicago may have jumped up and won this thing? That's exactly what ended up happening. So they kind of revealed it a little bit early and leaked it themselves.
And part of me thought as soon as I saw that Columbus went down to 3 and Chicago was moving up, I said Chicago's probably winning this.
Yeah. I had a feeling too. I did have a feeling that was going to be the case. And as I stated earlier, I think it's best for the league. I understand the anger some people probably have about them being rewarded after the last few years and kind of the whole Kyle Beach situation and that was awful, terrible. But I think to your point you made earlier too, especially with Kane and Taves moving on, I don't think there's a single member of that team that's remaining from that
No,
situation.
don't think so.
Coaching staff, no, the coaching staff is different. Front office is different. Like there might be some lower level people who have absolutely no idea what's going on, who
Yeah.
might still be in the organization, but the main faces of that organization back then, none of them are still there. So I think with those two leaving, and now they bring in Bedard, they can really have a clean slate and a fresh slate here, and hopefully move on and be a noble franchise. And we'll see what happens. I assume come, was it July or June 26th or something like that, 26th, 27th, end of June, whenever the draft is, Bedard will be the number one pick. I'll bet a lot of money on that being the case. All right, buddy. Good stuff. Fun show. Tomorrow, we'll be back. We got a game to tee up. Leafs playing for their lives in that one. We'll tee it up for all y'all tomorrow. That will do it for us here today on the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to it on the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead and leave a like on this video if you're watching. Comment down below your thoughts on what's plagued Toronto through 3 games, and how do you feel about Connor Bedard going to Chicago? Let us know in the comment section down below. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. We'll be teeing up Game 4, Leafs Panthers down in Sunrise. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.